Hey there, YouTubers. Oh, I'm the YouTuber. My bad. My name is Byron, and I am the inventor of the Business Cortex. It is a business development framework to help entrepreneurs, CEOs, COOs, and people interested in business understand this wild world and all of the things that are happening in it. It's kind of complex, kind of ambitious, but that's really what business is. It's a big, complex endeavor. So you need a tool and a framework to help you figure out everything that's going on. So it's informed by a couple of things. It's informed by business architecture. I've read a lot of business books, and I'm putting all this stuff into it to kind of make sense of everything. This is going to be one of the first videos because they say make a lot of videos and post them on YouTube, and eventually all the riches will come. That will be for both me and you. So don't worry about that. So I just want to kind of go over a couple of slides that I've created to kind of examine the dynamics of the business architecture. The business cortex, and some of the things that I am creating to help myself interact with people and kind of guide them through the process. So the fundamental approach of the business cortex is that business is, while it is complex, it is structured. And a lot of the advice that you get and research that you get about business is partial. So you might focus on one particular role or one particular function, like you might just do marketing, or you might just do finance, or you might just do accounts payable, or you might just do some other department. However, if you want to build a whole business, you need to understand how all of it interacts and works together, and that is the specific thing that the business cortex is trying to show you. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over maybe five slides. So we'll run right through them real quick. We'll come back and then go over them in a little more detail. So this is about market dynamics. So how your company and the things that it does interacts with the market. Now, of course, for most of these, you'll see that there are color codes that you can use to kind of cross-reference things. So this is the market dynamics. And then below this, we would have, let's go down here. This is the business architecture. So inside the business, you have a couple different departments. So this is kind of the easiest way to look at it in terms of departmental coordination. So you have sales and operations, and whole programs called sales and operations planning. You have advertising and production, which is for a different way of saying demand generation and supply chain planning and so forth. And then you have finance, targeting, design, and investment. And so it's organized into rows and columns to help you think through things and make sure that you focus on something specifically without jumping all over the map. Like, for instance, you don't want to get into a conversation where you're talking about investment in one investment in one paragraph and then jumping to sales in the other. You'll see that what you probably want to do is go box by box or cell by cell. So if you talk about something adjacent to it without jumping. So that kind of helps, one. And two, also if you kind of follow the flow from marketing to product to profit. So we'll talk about that a little more, probably in another video, because this will probably just be a real quick summary video. And then this is my kind of business architecture diagram, where there's a whole world of business architecture and enterprise architecture, and they talk to each other. And the thing I tend to miss is how what they're doing is related to the strategy of the business. While they say, oh yeah, it's about business strategy, and they talk about ontology and taxonomy and stuff, I don't really see what they are focused on, which is kind of this part, and how that actually fits with this part. So in the world of the business architecture, I guess the stuff on the left is my invention or my addition and contribution to it. So over here you have customers and prospects. Prospects are the people that you want to buy your stuff, and customers are the people that actually buy your stuff. So we talk about business strategy, and usually business strategy is very general and abstract. We have SWOT analysis, market, et cetera, et cetera. Those paradigms and frameworks still apply. But I wanted to kind of bring some of it down into the texture of what's going on inside the business. So we have value proposition, the value chain, which is more like the Michael Porter's value chain. So I referenced the SWOT analysis, the guy that created the SWOT analysis for strengths, weaknesses, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Also created a value chain diagram, and then down here for value stream, there's more like lean thinking from Womack and Jones. And you'll see as we go from left to right, we have it, I guess, a little more abstract, where we have the values and so forth, whereas over here, data applications and technology, is a little more specific and technical. Where that theme also flies from top to bottom, whereas business strategy is very nebulous. Business design is a little more specific, whereas business strategy is like, how do you adapt to the market? Business design is, what kind of system do you build in order to adapt to the market? And you go down. So that's that. This I like to call my, let's call this the software immaturity to maturity model. And that's because I've seen a lot of data and tech maturity models, and they're very abstract. And I try not to think in the abstract because it just becomes kind of circular and tautological. So I like to think in terms of real tangible processes or tangible things that you move. So we go from the left to right, where it's immature to mature. So in the beginning, you have an idea. You might write something down on a Post-it note, back of the napkin, or in your moleskin notebook, and you're like, great, okay, cool, here's my original idea. So that's the concept. And eventually you might start putting in lists like, hey, I got a couple to-do lists, I want to track this. You put information over here, you start filling up your moleskin, and it might be paper-based and whatnot. Or you might just have like a little Asana app or something. Start adding. And then as you start to build out your business, or build out a department, or build out an initiative, you might create more complicated lists, maybe in a spreadsheet to track users, signups, things like that. And then what you're doing there is you're taking that information and emailing it to people. This happens all the time in a business. Somebody has a spreadsheet, somebody called in an order, somebody forwards it, and then there's 16 people on the email chain all focused on one order, and it gets a little hectic. But if you don't have a database that manages all of that, you're kind of stuck in email. So then we go into stage 4, where you have a database. A database is an organized, usually I'm talking about relational databases. There are, NoSQL databases and so forth, but we're not going to get into that. So you'll have a relational database like a CRM, or a database like a store, or a database like QuickBooks to chart all of the transactions that you have in your business and so forth, and that helps you figure out what's going on. And usually other people have access to it, whereas a spreadsheet may or may not be shared, and by kind of default, a database would have access permissions, so multiple people can look at something, update something from different places without having to everybody try to sync up with the same version of a file and so forth. And then you have multiple databases. So you might have one for your project management, one for your CRM, one for your store, one for your asset management, and one for, all of these things. But it would be great if you had them networked together. So we have network databases, whereas regular, okay, cool. And then you have large databases that are focused on coordinating other databases. So you have PLM for a project or product lifecycle management, or project lifecycle management, or portfolio lifecycle management, or whatever. You have an ERP for enterprise resource planning, and an OMS for an order management system. And these are all different databases that have particular sets of information that interact with other databases. And so, as somebody building a company, you have to figure out, okay, well, this is nice, but what are the softwares that I need to buy? And so this is a slide that focuses on software for, I like to say, companies that move atoms. So if you are a retail store, you're buying stuff from a warehouse or a distributor, it comes to you because you order it and it's transported there, and then it's in your store and you sell it and so forth. So this is kind of the a way to look at a lot of the different functions in the different softwares that you may or may not buy. So you might buy an ERP that has all of these things, like an open source ERP like ODOO, or you might have something like NetSuite or SAP or some other off the shelf or custom ERP or order management system. But this slide is just trying to show you the different types of functions of software that you have to relate in order to transact your business. So as you can see, the Business Cortex, it's pretty comprehensive in touching a lot of the points and trying to help people understand the different dynamics and all of the functions in business. And that will be all for now. So I will see you soon.